I believe the most important lifestyle factor that will prevent you from pulling the trigger is diet. So there's no doubt that of all the lifestyle things we talk about, the two most prominent being diet and exercise, that diet is hands down the most important. And this is not to discount the importance of exercise, because we know that exercise can be beneficial for so many things. It's good for your heart health. It's good for your lung health. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your bone health. There's no shortage of reasons why people shouldn't exercise. But the simple fact is, if you have a truly bad diet, you cannot outrun a bad diet. No matter how much you exercise, if your diet isn't up to scratch, unfortunately, it's going to place you at risk. And I might ask you a question here. You've been the cricket doctor for the Australian team. You've worked with the Socceroos. You've worked in the English Premier League. You've mixed it up in the AFL. I mean, you've really been involved with elite athletes for most of your career, people who are exercising at the elite level. So I'm just wondering if you've got any reflections on whether the amount of exercise athletes do actually protects them from diseases like diabetes.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I mean, it's always struck me as amazing how many elite athletes are actually a little bit overweight, despite the fact that they're spending 24/7 seemingly training and exercising. They're still 2, 3, 4 kilograms overweight. And I believe, and I didn't really understand why until I sort of started to understand the role of sugar and carbohydrates and so on. And I think it's basically related to their diet, in that they've always been encouraged to have such a huge amount of carbohydrate, especially sugars, as part of their to fuel their exercise. And as a result, they tend to become insulin resistant because of that huge sugar load. And I think it's quite common for elite athletes to be a little bit overweight. The other thing that worries me is that there's this whole generation of athletes who've had massive amounts of sugars and carbohydrates in their diet. And what's the long-term effect of that going to be? I mean, anecdotally, they seem to have a lot of issues with type 2 diabetes and heart disease and so on. And I suspect that's largely because of that very high sugar load that they have in their diet. So, it's certainly, being an elite athlete is no guarantee of longevity.
Well, there's not just elite athletes, but even people who would assume would exercise a lot. So marathon runners, the top of the top, the NFL footballers in America, you've got these guys having heart attacks at a young age. I mean, it's not saying that exercise is responsible. What I'm saying is that exercise is not protective. If your diet is full of sugars and other rubbish, then no amount of exercise will save you. Having said that, for any given diet, exercise can be fabulous. And one thing that I've got a particular fondness for is resistance training, Peter. And I think all too often we actually discourage people from actually pushing or pulling things that are quite heavy. And we know that that's one of the best things that a diabetic can do, because muscle, if you build muscle, that actually acts as a sink for some of the sugar in your blood. And quite literally, when you contract a muscle, there's actually special doorways that will open in the muscle that can take sugar out of your blood. So exercise can be fabulous, and especially resistance training.
Yep, certainly. We're certainly not being negative at all about exercise. After all, we are sport and exercise medicine physicians, Paul. So we love exercise. But I think we both agree that exercise is number 2 in the pecking order, really, as far as important factors in both the prevention and the management of type 2 diabetes. So let's get back to diet. And what are the dietary factors do you think that are more likely to make people prone to develop type 2 diabetes?
Well, I mean, this is almost too logical. And some people hearing this for the first time might be scratching your heads a little bit, because you're thinking, well, this just sounds too simple. if it was so simple, surely I would have heard about it by now. And that's a really common refrain. And to be perfectly blunt, that's something that both Peter and I will often wonder about as well. So the very premise, we know diabetes, too much sugar in the blood. So that leads us to the question, well, where on God's green earth does that sugar come from? And it comes from food that you eat. So if you are not eating sugar, then yes, the body does have the capacity to make some sugar, but it usually won't make sugar to excess. In almost every case of a type 2 diabetic, when your sugar level is incredibly high, or even pre-diabetic, we'll take wherever you are on the spectrum, it's diet, it's food that you eat. Now, here's a trick question, Peter. What foods contain sugar?
Yeah, well, that's very good. I think everyone is familiar with sugar, like the table sugar, white sugar, and even glucose. And I guess most people understand that. But there's really two groups of what we call carbohydrates, and the sugars are one, and the starches are the other. And I think that's the one that people always miss out on. They don't understand. Most people get sugar, but what they don't understand is starches. So a starch, so things like potatoes, rice, pasta, they're full of starches. And what a starch is...
Well, hang on, Peter, hang on. We've been told, so pasta, wholemeal pasta, sweet potato, brown rice. Is this what you're saying?
All still starches. That's right. And so what a starch is just a bunch of glucose molecules stuck together. So when we eat something that is a starch, what the body, the digestive system does is, with its enzymes, it breaks down those bunches of glucose molecules that form a starch into the individual glucose molecules. And so when the sugar or the glucose hits the bloodstream, it does so from starch exactly the same way it does from normal sugars. The only difference is it's a bit slower with the starches because it has to be digested. But when it hits the bloodstream doesn't sort of say, "No, hang on, you're a glucose from sugar and you're a glucose from starch." You're all just glucose molecules, and you're all combined to make blood glucose, and that they're the things that drive your blood glucose level. So it really doesn't matter whether it's a sugar or a starch. It's still carbohydrates consisting of glucose.
I'm going to make an embarrassing confession here, Peter. I went through medical school and I did not fully appreciate that carbohydrates, once digested, turned into sugar directly in the blood. Now, I think I probably did understand it academically, but it's not something I processed. It's not something which I turned around and said, you know what? If that slice of bread is going to have the equivalent of 3 teaspoons of sugar in it, I probably shouldn't recommend it to a diabetic patient. No, we went around and we were looking at the patients in the hospitals with their diabetic diets that were prescribed, and they had their, their sugary yogurt and their bread and bagels and whatever other crap which would be spiking their blood sugar levels. And I went along quite happily with it. And
it's still happening. Still happening.
Yeah, well, that's the travesty of it. I mean, I thought, we paid however much for a medical education, and look where it ended up.
Wasted on us.